Hi Kipsters, today we're going to finish up reading the story The Watsons Go to Birmingham. Just a quick recap from yesterday. We know that on Sunday afternoon, a bomb had been dropped on the church that Joey attended Sunday school at. When Kenny went to the church, people all around him were in shock and hysteria trying to find their loved ones. Kenny had actually gone right into the church and found what he thought to be Joey's shiny black shoe in the dust and the rocks. When Kenny got home, he was in shock and thought that he was imagining Joey talking to him because he thought that Joey had been in the church. However, it really was Joey. She had left Sunday school early and was not harmed in the bombing. Today we're going to finish the last chapter of our story. We have two big picture questions that we're going to consider as we read the last chapter. The first one has to do with cause and effect. When Kenny got back to Flint, he acted very differently. What were some of the things that he did? Why did he act that way? So we know what the cause was. We know that the bombing had a huge effect on probably the way that Kenny's going to be acting, but we're going to talk about what that effect looks like. And then we're also going to compare and contrast what was different about Flint than Birmingham. The last chapter ended with the bombing happening in Birmingham. This next chapter starts that the family has already traveled back to Flint, Michigan, and it's been a few weeks. Mama and Dad didn't know I was in the living room. We'd been back in Flint for a couple of weeks, and they were still talking about what happened, but never around us. The only thing I knew for sure was that the bomb wasn't dropped on the church by an airplane. Grandma Sands called a couple of times and told them that the police thought two white men drove by in a car and threw it in during services, or that they'd already hidden it in the church with a clock to set it off during Sunday school. However it got in the church, it had killed 4 little girls, blinded a couple more, and sent a bunch of other people to the hospital. I couldn't stop wondering if those 2 little girls I saw on the lawn were okay. From my secret hiding place in the living room, I could listen to Mom and Dad, and it seemed like they spent most of the time trying to figure out how they could explain to us what happened. Some of the time they were mad, some of the time they were calm, and some of the time they just sat on the couch and cried. Even though none of us kids got hurt by the bomb, they acted like they were worried about us. They weren't too worried about Byron and weren't worried at all about Joey. We'd all agreed not to tell her what happened at the church and had left Birmingham that night before she had a chance to find anything out. I was kind of surprised because the way Mama and Daddy were talking, I could tell that they were most worried about me. They came out of the kitchen and sat on the couch. I knew they were talking about me again. Mama said, "He's been disappearing, Daniel. Hours go by and I don't know where he is." "What does he say when you ask him where he's been?" "He tells me he hasn't been anywhere. He says I shouldn't worry. It's so strange. I call him and he's nowhere to be found, but a few minutes later he just pops up." "Doesn't Byron know where he goes?" "He says he doesn't." "He is being awfully quiet. Something's wrong. I wonder if Mr. Roberts' friend was right. I wonder if he really did see Kenny in the church afterward. Lord, who knows what that poor boy saw?" "Lona, he says he only left Grandma Sands to tell us Joey was okay. I don't know. What else can we do?" "But Joey swears it was him she followed away from there, and you know that child would just as soon die as lie. I just wish I knew where he goes and why." I had been disappearing. Mama really didn't need to worry. I wasn't going anywhere. I'd just been going behind the couch for a little while every day. There was a big enough space between the couch and the wall for me to squeeze in back there and just sit in a little ball. It was quiet and dark and still back there. Mama started trying to force me to do more things with Rufus, but it seemed like he'd changed while we were gone and wasn't as much fun to be with. Him and Cody got real happy when I gave them my pillowcase full of dinosaurs. I was getting too mature to play with toys anymore. Mama even forced Byron to take me with him when he and Buphead played basketball. But you didn't have to be an Albert Einstein to figure out that the only reason the big guys were playing with me was because Byron had threatened them when my back was turned. But what really bugged me the most was how Mama tried to force me to do things with Joetta. I never noticed what a little crybaby and snitch she was. Every time you turned around, she was threatening to go tell on you or was whining about something. Or being just a plain old pest. After a while, to get even with her, I wouldn't even look at her. I started hating her guts. I only wanted to come out from behind the couch to eat and to go to the bathroom. I even started going into it after Mama and Dad went to bed at night. I started sleeping there. I spent so much time there that Byron finally figured out where I was going. I looked up one day, and there his eyeballs staring down at me. Hey, By. Hey, Kenny. So this is where you've been hanging out, huh? Are you going to tell on me? Man, when have you ever known me to be a snitch? Never. You're right. He just keeps looking at me. You want me to get you something to eat? Byron walked over and turned on the TV, then stuck his head back behind the couch. You want to watch some TV? His head disappeared and he watched Batfink. When the show was over, his head came back. I'm going to play some ball. You want to come? I'll come in a minute. He looked like he didn't believe me. Cool. Later. Even though Byron had a reputation for not being a snitch, I got the feeling that he told on me. When they sat on the couch, Mama and Dad quit talking like nobody was around and got real careful about what they said. They started saying stuff about how proud they were of me and what a nice kid I was and junk like that, but it sounded like they'd been practicing what to say. I turned my ears off when they came around. Mama also quit bugging me to find out where I was going. I knew they'd busted me for sure when Joetta's snitchety little face started peeking around the couch every morning. Byron even started sleeping on the couch at night. Right after Mom and Dad went to bed and I crawled back there, he'd come out with his pillow and blanket. Night, Kenny. Night, Bye. Every morning I'd wake up and Byron would be looking down at me. He'd wake up by touching the top of my head. Hey, Kenny. Hi, Bye. You all ready to eat? Come on. I crawled out from behind the couch and let Byron pour out my cereal and milk. After I finished, I said, thanks. Wait, ain't you gonna change out of PJs? Oh, yeah. I changed and went back to the couch. Bye was sitting there. Byron grabbed my arm before I could crawl behind the couch. Nah, man, at least stay for Felix the cat. Okay. I sat next to him on the couch. When Felix was over, I thought Bye would force me to watch more cartoons, but he didn't. He let me crawl back behind the couch. Check you out later, Kenny. See ya, Bye. As much time as Byron started spending on the couch, I thought I was going to have to make room for a bed for him behind the couch. Every time I'd looked up, he'd be there, and we'd have to go eat, or watch some TV, or go to Mitchell's for something, or change clothes, or stuff like that. One day, his head popped over the back of the couch, and he said, Come on, I got something to show you. I knew I had to go. If I wouldn't, he'd pull me out by my legs. I followed Byron upstairs into the bathroom, and he stood in front of the sink and looked in the mirror. He scrunched his face up so he could see the bottom of his chin. Then he took his thumb and finger and felt around there. He smiled and real slow pulled the thumb and finger away. Check this out, Jack. I looked real close, and there was a long, skinny black hair growing out of Byron's chin. He held it like it was worth $1 million. And there's another one coming out too. This made me wonder about my mustache. I hadn't looked at it for a long time, and I thought it might be pretty long by now. I climbed up on the toilet and leaned over the sink to see. Maybe it was because I hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time, but as soon as I saw myself with my lazy eyes still being lazy and my face looking so sad, I slammed my eyes shut and started crying. I even fell off the toilet. Byron caught me and set me on the floor. He knew this was some real embarrassing stuff, so he closed the bathroom door and sat on the tub and waited for me to stop. But I couldn't. I felt like someone had pulled a plug on me and every tear inside me was rushing out. If there was a forest fire somewhere, all Smokey the Bear would have to do was hold me upside down over it and the fire wouldn't stand a chance. Byron sat next to me on the floor and put my head in his lap. I still couldn't stop, even though I was soaking him worse than Joey ever drooled on anybody. It was real embarrassing. I'm sorry, Bye. Shut up and cry if you want. That sounded like a real good idea, so I did. I think I cried for about 200 hours. Why would they do that, Byron? I was sounding real bad. My throat was jumping around in my neck and making a bunch of weird noises. Why would they hurt some little kids like that? He waited a long time before answering. I don't know, Kenny. Mama and Dad say that they can't help themselves. They did it because they're sick, but I don't know. I ain't never heard of no sickness that makes you kill little girls just because you don't want them in your school. I don't think they're sick at all. I think they just let hate eat them up and turn them into monsters. But it's okay now. They can't hurt you here. It's all right. My Adam's apple felt like it was going to blow a hole in my throat, but I said, I did go back to the church, Bye. I saw what happened. I saw 2 of those girls. I thought Joey got killed too. We all did, Kenny. There ain't nothing wrong with being sad or scared about that. I'm sad about it too. I got real scared too. But, man, no one's gonna hurt you here, Kenny. But Bye. I tried to think how to say it. I'm not scared. I'm just real ashamed of myself. That was it. That was the main thing I'd finally found out from being a patient at the world-famous Watson Pet Hospital. Kenny, you ain't got nothing to be ashamed of. But you don't know what happened, Byron. You don't know what I did. Man, everybody cried. Mama was crying. Dad was scared. He cried too. That was some real scary stuff. That was some real sad stuff. So I'm going to pause here, and we know that Kenny has been having a lot of feelings since he got back. He did actually go to the church that day, and he saw what had happened to all of those little girls. He was worried that Joey was inside. So remember that his body was in shock, right? And we know that since he's been back, he's been very quiet and distant, and he's finally realizing that he feels shame. Shame means that you feel like something is your fault. And when he's feeling shame right now, he feels like he didn't do enough to help Joey. So that's where his shame is coming from. I'm also thinking about Byron, because I know that earlier in the story, Byron was giving Kenny a really hard time, and the whole reason they went to Birmingham was because Byron was in such a bad way, and he was being so mean to so many people and getting into a lot of trouble. But just by the way he's treating Kenny, I can see that this situation has really affected him too, and he's realizing that he wants to be a better person. Byron started throwing me curveballs. If you hadn't been born, who would have took her away from the bomb? No one. If you hadn't been born, she would have walked out of the hot church and saw some stranger waving at her from across the street. You think she would have followed him? Heck no. She'd have gone right back in there. If you hadn't been born, she would have gone in that church to see if Joey really was in there. Me and Mama and Dad was all too scared. You were the only one brave enough to go in there. Every time he made a point, he twisted my ear to make me understand a little better. But Byron, it's just not fair. What about those other kids, you know? They had brothers and sisters and mamas and daddies who loved them just as much as we love Joey. How come no one came and got them out of the church? How is it fair? How come their relatives couldn't come and warn them? Byron let go of my ear and thought for a second. Kenny, things ain't ever going to be fair. How is it fair that 2 grown men could hate Negroes so much that they'd kill some kids just to stop them from going to school? How is it fair that even though the cops down there might know who did it and nothing will probably ever happen to those men? It ain't. But you gotta understand that that's just the way it is and keep on stepping. Byron let me sniff and wipe my hand across my eyes before he slid my head back onto the linoleum and stood up. He went over and got some toilet paper and wiped my tears and my boogers off his legs. Then he let a couple of sheets of toilet paper float down and land on me and said, "Blow your nose, wash your face. You've been behind that couch long enough. It's about time you cut this mess. Mama and Daddy beginning to think you're a little behind is seriously on the blink. Today is the day that you check out of the world-famous Watson Pet Hospital. Don't let me catch you back there no more. You ain't got no cause to be ashamed or scared of nothing. You smart enough to figure this one out yourself. Besides, you got the word from the top wolf himself. You gonna be all right, baby brother. I swear for God." He blew himself a kiss in the mirror and left the bathroom. Before he shut the door, I could see that Mama and Daddy and Joey were standing there in a little line, not trying to let me know that they were eavesdropping. Mama whispered, "What's going on, Vi? Why was Kenny crying like that? Is he okay?" He told her, "Kenny's gonna be cool. He's related to me, ain't he?" "Byron Watson, how many times have I told you about saying ain't?" I climbed up on the toilet, leaned over the sink to take a look. I smiled. Byron was right about some things, too. He was very right when he said I was too smart to believe magic powers lived behind a couch. He also knew what he was talking about when he said I was going to be all right. Joetta banged on the bathroom door. "Kenny, Byron said that you're feeling much better. Now, if that's it, come on out. I gotta go to the bathroom real bad." She said real like it had a million letters in it. Some of the time, I wondered if there really was something wrong with me. A few minutes ago, I'd been crying on the floor like a kindergarten baby, and now I was looking in the mirror laughing. I blew my nose, splashed a little water on my face, 'cause I wanted to go out. Besides, I had to think of a way to get at least half of my dinosaurs back from Rufus. Come on in, Joey. So that's the end of this story. In the beginning of the lesson today, I told you that we were going to talk about cause and effect and then also compare and contrast some things. So I know that when I'm thinking about cause and effect, I know that the cause was that Kenny had seen the bombing Kenny had seen the aftermath of the bombing at the church, and that had a huge effect on him. We know that before this, Kenny was a very chatty kid who asked lots of questions and was very excited, but after this, he kind of put himself in shock, right? He even started hiding behind the couch. He didn't really want to talk to anyone. He didn't want to play with anyone, and he was feeling a lot of shame because he couldn't understand why there were people out there that would do such hurtful things to anyone. And that was really, really hard for him to process, especially as a 10-year-old. You know, that's not something that he's ever experienced before. And then when I think about comparing and contrasting Flint in Birmingham, we know that when they first got to Birmingham, they said that it looked a lot like Flint did. There were lots of trees and houses, but the feeling was very different because at this time in the United States, the South was not a very safe place for people of color. They were treated very unfairly, as we saw in this story. And again, remember, this is a historical fiction story, so although this particular story didn't happen, these events are true. There really was a bombing in Birmingham of a church, and there really were 4 little girls who passed away because of it, and there were other kids who went blind and were hospitalized because of this. So although this particular story didn't happen, the events in the history and all of that did happen. So that's the end of our story for today. Remember that historical fiction is another genre that we did talk a little bit about this year, but it's a good way to learn facts about things that did happen in history while also reading a fictional story. We will see you on Monday.